Hey guys, all right, so we are learning how to add integers. You're going to watch this video. You're also going to watch a video that has a little song to row, row, row your boat that explains how to add integers. So here we go. So when you are adding integers, you are basically deciding, what am I adding? Am I adding two numbers that have the same sign or two numbers that have different signs? Meaning, are they positive, positive? Are they positive, negative? Are they negative, negative, or are they negative, positive? And so will always start everything with, does it have the same sign or does it have a different sign? And depending on your answer, depends on which numbers you follow and which steps. Adding integers is very similar to when you were in science class and you had protons and you had electrons. And what you ended up finding out is that, hey, if I have two protons and I have two protons and two electrons, they actually cancel each other out and I've got nothing left. Then you had some problems that were like, hey, if I have two protons and then I had, let's say, 5 electrons, you end up realizing that you end up with a negative result, because what you realize is that the two positives cancel out with two of the negatives, which leaves you with a -3. So your answer was always, I have 3 electrons left. And it's very similar, excuse me, so sorry. It's very similar with adding integers. This is the same problem of, hey, if you have, oh no, what just happened? It all got deleted. How do I undo that? There we go. What happens if I have 2 plus a -5? And if I have 2 plus a -5, that's the same thing as having 2 protons and 5 electrons, which leaves me with a -3. So today we are not going into subtraction. We are simply dealing with adding integers, because what we'll realize is that with adding integers, we have to become very comfortable with it, because in order to do subtraction tomorrow, we have to be awesome at adding. Because we'll change those problems to adding. So within adding integers, you actually sometimes subtract, which can be very confusing, which is why we learn that this addition sign simply just means that it goes to the number after it. So here in this problem number 1, I'm going to ask myself, do I have the same sign or do I have different signs? And here I'm going to go ahead and say, I have different signs. So when I have different signs, I go ahead and I ask myself, I'm like, okay, I've got a -8 and I've got a 24. Let's follow my different signs rules. So different sign says, number 1, keep the sign of the larger number. Well, which number's larger, 24 or 8? Hopefully you're saying 24 to yourself. And so therefore that means that I have more positives than I do negatives. So therefore my answer will end up being positive. And then I go to the actual, well, how do I get my answer? So it says, to get your answer, you've got to subtract the numbers. So off to the side, I'm going to do 24 minus 8. Okay, and what do you get when you get 24 minus 8? You get 16. So my answer ends up being positive 16. All right. If you have any questions, review that, go back. But let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Number 2 says -11 plus -6. If I have -11 plus -6, I have to realize that they are the same signs. So because they're the same signs, I'm going to follow my same sign rules. So that means I'm going to keep the sign. Since they are both negative, my answer will be negative. And then I add the numbers. 11 plus 6 is 17. Okay. So if you think about it, if you have 11 negatives and then you have 6 negatives. Altogether, you have 17 negatives, which makes sense. Number 3, if we look at it, I've got 17 plus negative 42. These are different signs. So therefore, I have to follow my different sign rules. I keep the sign of the larger number. Well, in this case, I have 17, 42. 42 is larger, so therefore I'm going to be negative. So then I go ahead and I subtract my two numbers. 42 minus 17 is 25. So my answer is negative 25. Number 4 looks very similar to stuff that you already know. It is two positive integers, and so therefore I am going to follow the same signs, which means I'm going to keep the sign, which is a positive. And then I'm going to add the numbers, and I get 40. Ooh, it's a big 40. All right. So that's adding integers in a nutshell. You will also just kind of look at these solving equations. How do you solve them? Well, if I looked at this problem, I went to go ahead and solve it, you would split it. And then I would say, hey, I see subtraction. So the opposite of that, the inverse operation, is to add 12. So I'm going to add 12. So I add 12 to both sides. And I get x equals, following my integer rules, I notice they're different. I have more negatives, and therefore my answer is 21. And for number 6, I go ahead, I split it. For this one, you'll notice the inverse operation is addition, but I'm going to add a negative 9 to both sides. I add a negative 9 to both sides because currently it's being subtracted by a negative 9. And I end up on this side with my x, and on this side I realize, hey, these are different. But I have more positives than negatives, so my answer will be a positive, and my answer will be positive 5. All right, guys, so that is adding in a nutshell. Go ahead, review, rewind, pause, whatever you need to do. Come check in with me and go ahead and watch the video of how to add, subtract, or how to add integers using a nice little song to row, row, row your boat. All right, see you later.